All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Daniel Teaches Experience. Folks, I'm very excited because today I have on my good friend, Elliot Gustafson. Now, me and Elliot, we met back in high school, and there's a lot of reasons why I like this young man. But one of the amazing things that we bond over is our love for the UFC, MMA, fighting, and everything that's involved with martial arts. So today, there's going to be a lot of talking about martial arts and just all the beautiful intricacies and all the things that are involved. But first and foremost, Elliot, thank you so much for being here today, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, man. It was great to be here.
Awesome, buddy. I love the positivity. Now, Elliot, let's get right into it. My friend, when we talk about, the boxing or UFC, martial arts, what was the first introduction that you had kind of to the martial arts scene? Like, when did you get involved? Like, was it a specific fighter, a specific time?
I was a little different, actually. It was my Koshi, my sensei, back when I first started, when I was like 4 years old. And there's another sensei that she would always like to spar with everyone, even when I was like really young and stuff and really didn't know anything. But she had like elite head movement. Like a lot of karate fighters, your heads kind of stay still because it's illegal to hit to the head. But she trained other martial arts, and her son is a K1 fighter. So she's trained in MMA and that type of stuff herself. So her head movement was elite. And I was like, I've never seen it before. Then another sensei said, go online and I want you to watch Anderson Silva. So from there,
sorry, Elliot, how old were you, man? How old were you when you just got into karate and then when you saw Anderson Silva? Yeah.
Let's see. It would have been a few years. I'm just trying to remember because I was training out in Esquimalt at the time. I think I was like 8 or 9. It's a little young.
Wow.
I didn't really like it at first because it was a lot violent because I was like 8.
Of course, dude. Of course.
But I loved his head movement. Like he had his hands down at his hips, taunting his opponent, and he would just move his head side to side, forward and backwards, and just slip shots. Like at the time, I was trained any shot that came near me, like to block. If your forearm, you sidestep, try and kind of more push it out of the way. Or he was slipping shots. He was just moving out of the way. He would sometimes just stand there, watch a guy punch, and then move at the last second and with no effort and just be there. It was fun to watch. And then from there, gone to watching Alexander Gustafson. Roughly would have been around the time when he fought Jon Jones for the first time. So been a bit older, like 11, and then George St. Pierre. Then I kind of stopped watching mainly because I didn't have a lot of friends that watched. And so I just kind of got back into it. I'm excited for like all the fights, especially of how good this year was, even with the pandemic, and how it's just going to get better next year.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So you started at like 9 years old, like 9, 10 years old. You're doing martial arts. You're watching Anderson Silva, and then you take off from there.
I kind of petered off, but then I've just kind of started rewatching again, and it's just it's a little bit more fun now since I train more than just karate. Like training in other disciplines, a lot of people that are also like equally as passionate about the sport. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome. What other stuff were you training?
I train right. I can't train right now because of the pandemic.
Right, obviously.
I was training with a couple of buddies in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. So
very cool, man. That's awesome. That is so sick. Yeah, man. Anderson was something else, dude. When he was like anyone who I want to get interested, I'm like, yo, you got to check out Anderson Silva highlights. He was something else. He's a freaking ninja. Was there a certain Anderson Silva fight that stands out to you?
I think when I was little, the one that kind of stood out to me the most is against Forrest Griffin.
Oh my goodness!
And they're fighting, and he just stands there, and he just goes, and as Forrest Griffin throws a overhand right with as much power as he could, he whiffs, and Anderson just stands there. He's just standing there. He's right in the line of fire, and then somehow it just leans back like an inch, and it misses. It's unbelievable. That was probably the most iconic moment. So.
That's a good one, man. I've easily seen that one 10 times. Whenever I want to show someone like any part of UFC and they've never seen it, that's the one I go to specifically. Like the way he just steps back and the left hand, like, oh my God, oh my goodness. That's unbelievable. And whenever I think of Anderson Silva, and he was such a, I mean, he was so ahead of his time. The moves that he was doing, he was so unbelievably smart and calculated. But whenever I think of Anderson, I can't help but think of his rivalry with Chael Sonnen, the first guy in the UFC who was really like WWE, WWF style. You absolutely suck and blah blah blah. And they had their first fight, and if you remember, Anderson was getting whooped. Anderson's undefeated, longest reign as a middleweight champion, I believe. And for 24 minutes, Chael Sonnen is out wrestling him. He's out striking him. And you're like, this is insane. And like a movie, I swear to you on my life, Mike Goldberg, bless his heart, goes, is it too early to start celebrating? And 20 seconds later, as you know, Anderson off his back with a triangle. And it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. What did you think about that? Do you remember that?
Well, I remember watching it live, but I remember just going back to rewatch it. It was unbelievable. It's like Anderson's losing, but like it made sense because like Chael Sonnen was kind of a nightmare matchup for him, but his striking was never like the best. But his ability to just take Anderson down and really kind of use kind of more the ground and pound technique, which like every wrestler uses now. Like Khabib's perfected it, of course, but like Chael was also very good at, because with wrestlers compared to more jiu-jitsu grapplers, that they're never taught to finish submissions. They're taught to just kind of hold someone there against their will. So it was quite nice to see Chael just kind of at his time and his prime to be the best at it, be able to do it against the best pound for pound fighter at the time against Anderson was really something special. And how Anderson was able to put up a last minute triangle is kind of one of the best, probably one of the best comeback from behind events in sports in general. There's like very few times, there's like nothing else you can really think of that really rivals like a comeback from behind scenario when it comes to combat sports. Maybe like Fury Wilder 1, where Fury is absolutely locked, is losing every round, and he scores 2 knockdowns and gets the draw for the rematch where he wins in the 7th. That's probably the next closest. For those that are boxing fans, you probably know it better than me. I'm more of an MMA guy.
Yeah, I'm the same boat, man. I'm more MMA. I just know the surface of boxing. I just know some of the bigger names. But now, Elliot, man, let's do this. If someone's listening to us, right, and wants to get into UFC, and then we'll talk about boxing afterwards. But for UFC, if there's a couple of names that you're like, hey, I want you to pay attention to this guy, starting now and the years to come, what kind of names would you throw out there?
Well, I think there were a couple of guys that were kind of more introduced this year, and Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland won 5 fights this year, and I'm pretty sure Khamzat won 3. And I potentially thought he could have won 4 if he didn't get COVID to fight Leon Edwards.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just blown up the MMA world, because Leon's a lot of people forget because of how much of a layoff he's been on. But Leon, at his best, is like a top 3 welterweight right now.
Yeah, you think so?
I think the only guys that only guys that I think can beat him when he's like truly like, there's only 3 guys I think that can beat him when he's at his best, and they have to be at their best, and that would be Usman, Burns, and Masvidal. I don't think Covington has the striking still to be able to beat Edwards, but I think Burns does, I think Usman does, and I think Masvidal. So Leon's pretty good there. And I also did think Khamzat, because of how hot he was, could beat him. But the one fighter I really think is going to be a star, it's a guy not a lot of people talked about, and I think Ariel only talked about him once on the Ariel and the Bad Guy show. I think I've told you about him, Leron Murphy from the UK. 7-0. And this guy, I'm pretty sure I told you about him. He got shot in the neck twice.
Right, I remember you telling me about this.
Beat his attacker. Like, this guy is afraid of nothing.
That's insane, man.
And I think I'm looking at his striking. I'm looking at how he stuffs takedowns. I'm like, oh, this guy's not afraid to get hurt. He's got the striking, and he's got the takedown defense. And the 145-pound division, the featherweight division, isn't necessarily the strongest anymore, in my opinion. You got Volkanovski. He's a great champ. Holloway, I think, is losing a step. Ortega's still there. He's still good. But yeah, like Chan's after that, I don't think Chan Sung Jung really has what it takes to be a champ. It's always a wild card because he's never healthy. But if he's healthy, He's dangerous. I think Leron's got a good chance to really get his name up there in the next couple of years to really be contending for a title. I'd not be surprised if this year he knocks out a big name. I think he wanted to fight Yair Rodriguez, but I think he got popped by USADA. Can't remember. I'm pretty sure he got popped by USADA a couple months ago. So
Gotcha.
Otherwise, he's a guy for sure. If you want to start following the sport and finding a fighter to support that you think is going to be good, Leron Murphy is the number one guy for me. You have a number one guy there, Daniel?
My number one, dude. If you were to ask me, Daniel, who is the most exciting fighter to watch? I would have said prior to this year or last year, I would have said Anderson Silva. Most exciting, just be on the edge of your seat. Wow, it's incredible. But as of right now, as of today's date, I would say if there's one fighter who I think is the most entertaining to watch and the most exciting, I think it's Israel Adesanya. Undefeated, moves unbelievably well, basically like a student of Anderson Silva's. Like Israel, it's unbelievable how good he is, man. How clean he is, how polished he is. Did you see what he did to Paulo Costa? He just decimated him.
No one does that to Paulo Costa.
Paulo's a train, man, and he was gonna go in there and just ram him down because we thought we were gonna get the Paulo Costa that faced UL. It was just gonna be a war, and he was gonna go forward, but Israel just picked him apart, and he just made him look like nothing. He just made him look like nothing, and I think when you can make it look easy, that's just such that the expert that you have to be in what you do with respects to feints, fakes, knowing what he's gonna do, throwing combinations, managing distance is unfreaking believable.
Yeah, Israel's ability to manage distance was unbelievable. I think one of the things that was so underrated about that fight, even though he just picked him apart, was the leg kicks he threw.
Oh,
after the first round, you could see Paulo Costa's left leg just covered in welts. It was bruised, it was beaten, it was battered bad, and you could see in his movement, he was starting to limp. And Israel just after that just kind of playing with his food, but nobody really cares anymore. He destroyed him. It wasn't even funny. Even at the end, he kind of looked like he kind of humped him as he was hitting him with strikes and they're on the ground. So I was like, my God. But man, yeah, for sure. I could so see getting people into MMA to show them Israel Adesanya.
The only thing I didn't like
in the world right now.
So totally. The only thing though, Elliot, I didn't like about that fight, and what I don't like about people who win a lot, is that sometimes instead of crediting Adesanya, they hit Costa. So instead of saying, wow, Adesanya, you're a brilliant mastermind, you kind of punish Costa for it, which I don't think is fair. In most of Khabib fights too. It's not that Khabib's fighting chumps. It's just Khabib is so freaking good that he makes them look like chumps. And I think that's such an important story.
Yeah, for sure. I remember especially after UFC 254, getting a lot of flack from some of my friends that are just casuals about saying, oh, why do you think Gaethje had a chance? I'm like, look at his record before that fight. Tony Ferguson, who's on an 11 fight win streak, I'm pretty sure at the time.
Last fight ridiculous.
Would have been against Kevin Lee, the intern champ. Won the intern
yep.
championships. This guy is dangerous.
Oh my
Tony
God.
Ferguson is a beast. Nobody makes Tony Ferguson quit in the octagon. Gaethje made him quit. You could see him shaking his head no, and Herb Dean stops in.
Thank God he
waves
did.
It off for
Thank
TKO
God he
because
did.
he's like Tony's done. Tony's quit. No one's ever seen that before. Even just recently against Charles Oliveira. That arm bar usually breaks people's arms, and you're tapping immediately. Not Tony. Tony's just the scariest guy in that division, and arguably the scariest guy in that sport, as a whole. And that's saying something because they're killers in MMA. They're real killers.
In the words of
and the fact that
you go ahead.
Gaethje just beat him for 4 rounds. Arguably, I think he won the second round. He did get caught with an uppercut at the end, but he was winning that round. He pretty much almost beat him for 5 whole rounds. It's unbelievable. And then they go around and call that guy a bum because Khabib was able to take him down, and then was able to roll to his back and get him in a triangle, put him to sleep. No, this guy's elite. He's probably arguably the toughest guy you could say that Khabib ever fought, but he just beat the brakes off him.
I couldn't have said it better, man. I couldn't have said it better. So let's talk about this. Khabib left, quote unquote. Does Khabib come back in 2021? Your prediction?
Oh, that's interesting because I was really, before we even started talking, kind of reading in about that. I remember Ariel and DC on their podcast, they were talking about that. And like Daniel Cormier, I'm paraphrasing here, but the only way he said that Khabib comes back is if he gets his mother's blessing and his opponent's George St. Pierre. Only way he's coming back. Khabib's not a guy that likes rematches. Remember a lot of talk in an interview recently. I can't remember who Khabib did the interview with, but he was asked, "Would you like to face the winner of McGregor Poirier?" And he said, "No. Why would I do that? I beat both of them. I made them both tap." And it makes sense. He beat both of them convincingly. Like he won, pretty sure, every round against McGregor except arguably the third round. Mm-hmm. And Poirier almost got him with a guillotine, but besides that guillotine, he was losing. He was losing on the feet and he was losing on the mat. So makes sense. He's not one of those guys that really cares for like rematches. I think he would fight George St. Pierre for legacy, to go down as the GOAT, the all-time #1 pound-for-pound fighter, and also for the memory of his father. A lot of people forget that Abdul Nurmagomedov, Khabib's dad, wanted his son's last fight to be against George, so he could go down as the greatest to ever do it. Not just the greatest lightweight to ever do it, the greatest. So I think because of that, those are really the only two reasons Khabib would come back. And if only one of those things happen and not both, he's not coming back. Yeah. I just don't see it.
Wow. I was actually listening to, it's funny that you said Ariel and Daniel Cormier, because I swear I was listening. I believe it was Ariel. It was either Ariel or Chael. Someone was talking to GSP, and it was right after Khabib retired, like a couple days, like maybe not even like 2 or 3 days. And they're like, yo, like
it was Chael 20 minutes after.
Right?
Chael interviewed GSP.
GSP, God bless him. He's like, you know what, man, like looking at the circumstances, and I'm paraphrasing here, because he left due to his father, I don't feel right calling him out because of how this is. So I'm not going to, but I assure you, Elliot, I 100% agree. I think if Khabib gets his mom's blessing, next year or the year after that, or even the year after that, he calls out GSP, I think GSP would be game. But GSP is getting old, man. I think he's 37, 38? I'm worried about him getting...
He's even older.
Is he older? Oh, man. I haven't kept up. Goodness.
I think he might be older.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. But yeah, man, that'd be a crazy fight. That'd be unbelievable. That'd be unbelievable.
I think the biggest fight in the promotion that you can make. Even bigger than Adesanya Jones, in my opinion.
I think so, especially when you had GSP take that hiatus and then come back, move up a weight class, and beat Bisping the way that he did. Woo! Holy smokes.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. St. Pierre's just something else. Like entirely. Because at the time, Bisping, he was on a mad win streak. He even completed his revenge tour by beating Rockhold for the title. So
I like that.
More impressive. I think people always kind of like looking back on it. Some of my friends, I also like talking MMA with, they kind of forget how good Bisping was. And like at the time, like Bisping did, like after that fight, kind of have to retire because his eye got damaged pretty badly in that fight.
He basically has one eye
now.
He basically had one eye to begin with, and he became champion. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, is he not one of like just the baddest men in history, period, just for doing that, for making it to the top?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, you got to give him some respect just for that alone, and the fact that he became world champion, an elite contender in 2 different weight classes, 185 and 205. So it's even more impressive. It's just also more impressive how St. Pierre beat him too.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The way he was able to get him out cold was unbelievable. It's like he's bleeding from I'm pretty sure from his nose up here. Like he's getting blood in his eye, and he's able to finish the choke. It was like, wow, excellent. It's absolutely brilliant.
Beautiful, man. It was beautiful. Elliot, my friend, let's talk about the 155-pound division. When I say that, when I say the lightweight division, who comes to mind? What fighters come to mind?
My God, there are a lot of fighters that come to mind.
Let's hear.
I think the ones that first come to mind is UFC 257, Conor Poirier. That's the fight right now everyone's talking about. That's the fight everyone's going to think about, because that can make will kind of help set the tone for the division. I think a bit more than Ferguson Oliveira. Like, Oliveira beat the brakes off Tony Ferguson, and he could have broken his arm in the first round, but somehow didn't, because Tony is he's not human. I don't know how to describe Tony. He's not human. His arm should be broken. It's not. Like, I looked at the injury report, not broken, not hyperextended.
Yeah.
Don't know how.
Hey, Elliot, don't you get a little upset like that Tony, this is what happened to him? Like, just from a perspective of who was on a win streak, he was supposed to fight Khabib, didn't happen. At some point, you think he'd fight McGregor, didn't happen. And I don't know if he'll ever make it to a championship fight again, man. There's a real chance we might never see him at that.
I don't think.
What do you think?
I agree 100%, and it is kind of disappointing. The fight failed to happen 5 times. Chandler, I remember he calls out Michael Chandler, the Bellator champ, and he's like, "Yeah, I got plans," and just refuses to take the fight. And you're like, because like, that would have been nice. I kind of want him to take that fight if Chandler actually accepted, because that would have put him back in the picture to fight McGregor. Or Poirier.
Yeah.
And got him back in the title conversation. But I do think he's done. Like, I don't really see him being at that level of a fighter, but I think it does help a bit to lay out the future of the 155-pound division if Khabib will be truly, will stay retired. Because then you got McGregor Poirier, and then you got Justin Gaethje. He's still the number 1 contender. He's kind of the guy right now outside of Khabib. He's the guy everyone's calling out. They're not even calling out, most people aren't even calling out McGregor. Like, McGregor went on Twitter and asked Poirier to do this. And you don't usually see McGregor. Haven't seen McGregor in years have to go out and call.
You're right.
Call somebody out, unless it was like Mayweather for the money fight. That would have been like 2017, I'm pretty sure.
Something
like that boxing bout.
2017.
Like 2017, that was like 3 years ago.
Wow.
When we last had to call somebody out. Like, and that's a while. Especially in the fight business, that's a lifetime pretty much. So that was rare to see. And still, like, you got Michael Chandler, who I mentioned earlier, former Bellator champ. He's a great wrestler. He'd be a tough matchup for, in my opinion, both Poirier and McGregor. You got my dark horse, one of my favorite fighters to watch, Dan Hooker. He lost to Poirier. I still think he's still the number 5 contender. And I think, in my opinion, he works on his cardio and he works on polishing up kind of the accuracy of his striking and tries to try and pick his shots a bit better instead of trying to brawl, because he relies a bit too much on his chin and on his toughness. I think he can make some noise. There's still a lot of guys, but the main names I'd probably go away with would probably be McGregor, Poirier, and then you got Gaethje, Chandler. Is probably now is the 4-man bracket that is going to be in for the title, and then you have to throw in Charles Oliveira now, who wasn't even like a thought for most people. He was not really that much of a thought for me until he beat Ferguson. Like, it's like, yeah, he's number 6 contender. He's tough. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's a veteran. He kind of struggled at 145 pounds. Then he goes up a weight class, kind of like Poirier, and now he's this elite fighter all of a sudden. That we all kind of, especially with Poirier for me, because I'm a huge Poirier fan. I was really hoping for him to finally break through, and he did, and got the interim gold. But I think Oliveira might be able to go on a run like that. Like, there's so many right ways you can go with that division right now that it's just kind of fun. You just kind of have to wait and see. Wait till UFC 257's over and see where that goes. See what the fans want, see what the fighters want. Like, the fighters calling each other out is pretty sick. Like, Chandler is going to be fighting Hooker, I'm pretty sure, at UFC 257. And I just remembered that right now. So
same card
it creates a lot of avenues.
That's the same card as McGregor and Poirier,
I'm
right?
pretty sure it's going to be the co-main event.
Oh,
I'm not sure
goodness.
they've confirmed it, but I remember Chael Sonnen was talking about it on the Bad Guy Inc.
Oh, that's so exciting, man.
Saying
So you'd have Chandler.
They've agreed to fight each other.
So Chandler, Hooker, McGregor, Poirier, all on the same card.
Yeah.
That's so crazy, man. That's insane. Oh my goodness. Christmas it's coming early. Holy shoot, it's coming again. Wow. Okay, Elliot, let's play matchmaker, right? You're the matchmaker. I'm going to give you a bunch of names, and you tell me what you would do with these guys. Ready? So the winner of McGregor and Poirier and the loser, Michael Chandler, Hooker, Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira, and yeah, we'll go those 6 guys.
The 6th. Ooh, so wow, this is going to be tough because it really depends on who wins or loses for me there.
Well, you do your predictions.
Let's go the scenario. Let's go the scenario that I think will most likely happen. Mm-hmm. I think McGregor's going to beat Poirier again. I think what I've learned from the Cerrone fight is that he's motivated again and that he wants to win. It seems like he's cut out the drinking, he's cut out the coke, he's cut out all that crap. He wants to win again. He wants to win, not only win, and it seems like he wants to defend as well because he's now fighting for legacy. He's not fighting for the money anymore, not fighting for the fame or the notoriety. He wants to fight for the legacy. He doesn't like how he's not considered worthy of being in the GOAT conversation anymore. A couple years ago, especially when he beat Alvarez, pound for pound fighter in the world, and people are saying, oh, is this guy the greatest to ever do this? I remember people seriously saying McGregor is the greatest to ever do this. Seriously. Now you say that, you get laughed at. You get clowned upon for saying that. But there was a time, and I think if he does win, I think the fight you make is him with Justin Gaethje right away. I said I'd go him, Gaethje. I would go Poirier, Ferguson. Now I'd go Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, because I think he'll probably beat Hooker. As much as I love Hooker, I think Chandler beats him. Even though Hooker's kind of a nightmare it's a nightmare matchup for him because of how good he is in the pocket with the elbows and how good he is with the knees when it comes to stuffing a takedown. I still think Chandler's improved his striking so much that he could get edge a decision win or even get a knockout in the later rounds because he knows that Hooker doesn't have the best cardio. Like after he can only really fight. I love the guy, but he can only really fight 3 rounds at an elite level. Then you see him fade. So, even though it's a co-main event potentially, I'm pretty sure they are for 257. It will be a 3-round fight, but I still think Chandler would get that by decision. And that just kind of leaves Hooker as the odd man out. Because you got Chandler Oliveira, you're going to go Gaethje McGregor, and you're going to go Poirier Ferguson because I don't think they've ever fought each other, and I think that would be still good. And I still think there are enough fans that would push Ferguson into that fight.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I don't think he'll really fight for the title again, and I don't think he's able to anymore because I think those shots he took from Gaethje, it's affected him. I think that Gaethje fight's really messed with him more than the Oliveira fight. I think that Gaethje fight, when he was preparing for Khabib, and the amount of damage he took, I think has affected him mentally. He's not move as the same guy. He's not strike or attack as Tony Ferguson of old. He doesn't move his head, and he doesn't have that confidence. He looked shaky. He kept moving backwards against Oliveira. And that's not the Tony I remember. I remember Tony, he liked circling his opponents. He liked making them feel like the walls were a little bit closer. And all of a sudden he would throw an Imanari roll or something random like that, but it would work. So yeah, I think that's probably where it goes because that's more assuming if I'm correct that Chandler beats Hooker and McGregor beats Poirier. And if it's the other way around, then I actually I'm stumped because Poirier's already beat Gaethje. So I'm not sure Poirier off one rematch would be interested in doing another rematch. maybe. Because you could do, if Poirier does win, you could have him fight Gaethje for the title or an interim championship. You don't know. Or you throw Charles Oliveira at Gaethje. That could work too for number one contender spot.
If you
and
were
have
to,
whoever wins the McGregor Poirier on.
if you were to put them all in a tournament, like all those guys that you just said, who would come out on top? Who is one name who you think at the end of whatever 2021 or 2022 stands on top of the mountain with the championship?
Oh, if you did it like in kind of like a 6 to 8 man tournament?
Yep.
Ooh.
Yep.
The title. That'd be exciting. Ooh, it's tough. Honestly, like I go with Gaethje.
Really?
I think his cardio has improved a lot since he stepped in from the World Series of Fighting into the UFC. After that Michael Johnson fight and after those 2 losses to Poirier and Alvarez, he's really worked on his cardio. That he can fight all 5 rounds at an elite level. And his level will not fade and it won't drop. So I think that's I do think he can be a nightmare matchup for McGregor. He can wrestle and he can strike him. He can hurt McGregor. And his reach isn't as short. I think Gaethje has like a 72-inch reach. McGregor 74, so like a 2-inch reach advantage. And I think he could do some real damage to Conor. Or it could be a Conor Alvarez 205 and Conor beats the brakes off him. Those are the only 2 fighters I see winning that tournament. But I think I'm going Gaethje.
Interesting. I would personally, man, I think I'd bet on Conor. I think in a division that is Khabib-less, I would bet on Conor. But with that said, I don't know what would happen if he were to fight Charles Oliveira. And if Oliveira gets really good at his takedowns, or if he was to fight a Michael Chandler, who kind of has that, I'm going to take you down ground and pound. Because the only other wrestler that I can really recall off the top of my head who McGregor beat was Chad Mendes, right? He stepped in kind of short notice.
Yeah, 189.
But he came out on top, So worked out well for him.
Yeah. That was a little interesting, though, because that was like a fight on 11 days' notice. Mendes took that fight on short notice because it was supposed to be Aldo and McGregor.
Yeah.
But Aldo fractured his rib. It was tough, though, because Mendes was cheating. But he was taking a steroid. Yeah, but he was doing it in the dumbest way. Because he was taking a steroid that is known for increasing appetite and slowing you down.
That doesn't make any sense.
Mendes, he was taking
he was
taking a BPH6, I'm pretty sure. That's what he tested positive for. And it's usually used for those that want to gain weight.
Interesting.
It makes you eat more.
Huh. I had no idea.
And because of that, it forces you to eat more of it's one of those steroids that's used for those who want to bulk up, some, I guess, bodybuilders, for example, want to put in or powerlifters want to put it in the work, eat a lot, and be able to lift twice a day. That's that, and they still have the energy to recover. That's what you would take.
Wow.
But it doesn't make sense. I don't know who told them to take that because it drains your energy. 1. And 2, Mendes naturally weighs 145 pounds. That was his walking weight. So why would you want him to get heavier, weight cut, show up to a fight that's 11 days away? I
don't know. I have no idea.
So that was one of the things that interests me. And because of that, when I rewatching that fight, he gasses out at the end. I think that's the only reason one of the reasons Herb Dean steps in when there's 5 seconds left and McGregor's on top of him is because he's gassed out. He spent the whole time, the first 9 minutes of just taking McGregor down and McGregor just holding him there and denying transitions. So yeah, because you're right, that is the last, besides Khabib, the last American Greco-Roman style wrestler that Conor's faced.
Talk to me about
Pakistani wrestling's a little.
Oh, it's totally different, man. Elliot, my friend, talk to me about Jon Jones. Talk to me about what do you think about him, the way he's moving. He just dropped the light heavyweight title, was like, hey, man, I'm going to go up to heavyweight. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's been saying for years he's going to move up the heavyweight. This time, I actually think he needs it. I think he's serious. And one of the things I want to see is Miocic Jones. Because Miocic is one of those guys, he doesn't like rematches. And he said to the UFC, look, I'm not interested in doing a rematch with Ngannou. I've already beat him. But Mike, I'm like, that was like almost 3 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Like, I wouldn't mind seeing that rematch, but you have a new guy called Jon Jones who's stepping up to 240. He's already at 240. And like I've seen some of his work, like I've seen some of the clips that his gym out in Albuquerque has released. And the guy, he looks 240. His walking weight's like 230, but he always kind of looked skinny. At 240, he might even be 245.
Whoa.
Like pushing 250. He's jacked. He's big.
What's the weight cutoff for heavyweights, Elliot?
265.
265.
265 for MMA, and then 270 or 280 for boxing. I can't remember.
And then how about for a light heavyweight? What is that? Is that 205?
Yeah, 205.
Gotcha. Interesting. 205.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I do think Jones Miocic, if Miocic is still staying no to the Ngannou fight, I think if you're Dana, you go up to him and you say, look, Jon Jones, Francis Ngannou, those are your two options. Pick one now.
I would have them fight each other, Francis and Jon, and then the winner gets Stipe.
Yeah. Actually, I could see that, but like I feel like Francis deserves the title shot now.
Yeah.
And I do think that is what Miocic wants. But what I think the UFC wants is Miocic defending the title again.
That's fair.
Because there's a lot of guys that are rising.
Yeah.
Volkov's starting to push himself back into that title conversation. Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis. Those are guys that are right there saying, yeah, we're ready for the title shot. We've strung a couple of wins together.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
Like the heavyweight division is exciting. But
let me ask you this.
I do like the idea of a Jones Ngannou, but I think Dana's kind of annoyed with the month, he went out to me saying, yeah, Ngannou is the next guy to fight Miocic, and Miocic has been saying no repeatedly. I think Dana's not one of those guys who has a long temper. He's kind of a short-tempered guy that snap quickly and do an impulse decision like that.
No, you're right. I would agree. So let's say this, Elliot Jones. Let's say he fights Stipe at some point, right? Wins the heavyweight title. Before I get to that, do you see a Jon Jones and an Israel Adesanya fight in the future?
I do. I actually do. I think if Izzy beats Blachowicz, which I think he can.
Okay.
And in my opinion, I think Jon Jones should get the heavyweight title kind of first. And then be like, I want to be a double champ. And decides to drop down. I think it's the most ideal scenario of ideal scenarios. Because now you got two guys that are undefeated. Like Jones's one loss was a disqualification from Steve Mazzagatti for beating a guy so bad that he was just wailing on him, and then he threw a 12-6 elbow, and boom, he's out.
He was never finished.
That's his only loss, and I
can't never finished, never submitted.
That his only loss is because he beat a guy so badly.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, he's undefeated. Izzy in the world of MMA is undefeated. If he becomes a double champ, Jones wins the heavyweight title, they're still on each other's case. They're still chirping each other over Twitter. Maybe throwing a few mug shots here or there, throwing a couple of photos of Adesanya getting knocked out in kickboxing, light the fire again, get a bit stronger.
Who'd win?
Jones goes, you know what? I don't like how this guy is a double champ. He drops back down. I got a little more animosity.
Does Jones
beat? These guys are going to be really fired up. Jones beat Izzy?
Do you think that would happen?
If he's motivated, yeah. It was tough. It's going to be tough because You and I, we've talked about this many times before. I thought John lost to Dominic Reyes.
Yep, I thought so too.
And I was really sad to see him lose to Blachowicz because he really deserved that title.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to see Dominic Reyes in the future win that light heavyweight belt. He's a great wrestler, and he's a good boxer. He can fight both stances. He's got great leg kicks. He's got great timing with his strikes, and he's got good head movement. He's the full package, and he's a great guy. So it's like you want to see him win. But if it does happen, if John drops back to 205 to fight Izzy, I think he wins because I think he's motivated.
I don't know about that, man.
I think 2021 could be the revenge tour. I think it's going to be the revenge tour for McGregor. I think he's going to come back and he's going to be aggressive. And I think it's going to be the same with Jon Jones. I think it's going to be, he's not only is he going to get the heavyweight title, I think he can come back and fight for the light heavyweight title if Adesanya wins it. He goes on a bit of a revenge tour and gives himself, because 2021, if everything happens right, it's going to be like the year of legacy fights.
Wow.
Of guys fighting for the GOAT. It's not just to win a world title now. It's to be the best to ever do it. You saw how much of a stink Jon Jones put up when he was being stripped of the number one fight title to Khabib.
Yep.
And how you're just going berserk on Twitter.
Who's in the GOAT conversation? Who's in the GOAT conversation right now, Elliot? Do you have to say number one? Because that's debatable.
GSP's my GOAT.
Okay, understandable.
Oh, in the combo? Well, for me, I already just said my answer kind of
for sure.
before you're able to finish your question there.
No, that's okay.
GSP's my GOAT. Like the Canadian, you got to be with the little homer bias there, but he's got the resume to back it up too. Like, guy's 2-weight world champ. He won on like a 13 fight unbeaten streak. And after he lost the belt to Sarah and he beat him again to get it. Won 13 straight fights with the title, and he had some wars. Like you thought Johnny Hendricks, who was roided out of his mind, just hitting like a heavyweight that, as Dana White put it at the press conference, wins that fight. Arguably could have lost it either way. I don't really. I haven't seen it in a while. I haven't rewatched it in a while, so I can't really tell. I think the judges though actually got it right, but that's probably my homer bias there for GSP. But he's beating some like bad dudes. He's beaten BJ Penn.
Oh Jesus!
It was like who got his black belt under Cesar Gracie in Jiu-Jitsu in 3 years, 3.5 years.
Unbelievable! Just unheard of.
That's insane. He beat a prime Damian Maia, who is still a top 5?
Maia, Condit,
7
Diaz.
contender still?
Killers, man.
Yeah,
Killers.
Nick Diaz. Ooh, that was a good fight. Yeah. He beat some guys. And if he stayed around a bit longer, I think he probably would have fought Robbie Lawler or Tyron Woodley coming over from Strikeforce if he didn't decide to leave in 2013 after the Hendricks fight. And I think he could have beat them. I think he could have beat some real monsters, some real champs. And he's beaten a lot of real monsters and real champs. Not to mention beating Michael Bisping after a 4-year layoff. The way he did it. He's my GOAT number one. And then I who else I'd have in there? Jon Jones, for sure. I think Izzy actually has to be in there now. A lot of people don't throw Israel on Adesanya. I think Israel's got to be in there, especially if he beats Blachowicz, gets the champ, undefeated, goes 21-0. You got to throw him in there.
Okay.
Undefeated. That middleweight. He can go up to light heavyweight and beats Blachowicz. You got to throw him in there. I think another guy people are going to throw in there is Khabib. 29-0. You got to throw him in there. I think for like women's MMA, you got to throw in Amanda Nunes. Absolute beast. And you could potentially throw. No, I'd stick with Nunes. Like I'm trying to stick with fighters that stay clean.
Oh,
I tell from my ripping names here. That's why I'm not going to put in. Like I'm going to give an honorable mention to Anderson Silva.
Interesting.
I think him being caught using steroids and him going on massive losing streaks after.
Well, was it actually steroids, Elliot? What was it actually steroids? Because I know he got caught positive for something, but I never understood what it was for or what the.
Well, Jon Jones got positive for
everything.
Originally, the story was the same with Anderson Silva and the same with Jon Jones, so that they had tainted sex pills, tainted Cialis or like Viagra or something. But then it turns out that they were using, but then they figured out the only way that you would, after using a sex pill, that a positive steroid test would come up is that if you're on steroid cycles in the past.
Oh.
So the belief, and this is something Cormier talked about on the Ariel and DC podcast a couple of years ago. So I'm trying to go back in memory here. So I might be paraphrasing, missing a few things. And you're saying that the only reason that would come up, according to the USADA officials and stuff, is that they're on a steroid cycle in the past. So the belief is that, say, because Anderson came to the sport quite late. He entered the UFC octagon when he first started fighting in his 30s.
Oh, wow.
So, in his early 30s. So, the belief is that he could have been on a steroid cycle, just before he stepped into the octagon or before USADA. So he could have been moving a bit faster, thinking a bit brighter, and able to hit at a more elite level. And it makes sense that once after he gets off that steroid cycle and permanently has to cleanse his whole body of those performance-enhancing drugs, that his level would drop, and it did.
I mean,
because of those reasons.
Elliot, man, I get you, right? Listen, I totally get what you're saying, man. But don't you feel like his losses were almost accidental? I totally understand where you're going with, but if you think about it, Weidman, right? The same showboating which brought him to the top, it cost him there. All right, whatever. The next one, that freak accident, him breaking his leg, right? Just, not his last fight, but his second to last fight against Jared Cannonier, right? The kick, again, he hurts his own leg, right? Or maybe Jared kicked him. They seem like just bad luck, or like Adesanya, he didn't look bad. It's just Adesanya was really good. You know what I mean? Doesn't it feel like he was so, I don't know.
You can make the case for sure.
Maybe I'm a homer. Maybe I'm just a huge fan of it, so that's why I'm biased. That could be it too.
No, I can totally see that. I'm cool with the disagreement there. It's just I just have I'm very much a stick. I was more a stickler for fair competition.
Yeah, that's fair, man. That's fair. But yet you included Jon Jones. You still included Jon Jones.
His last fight.
Yeah.
His loss to Uriah Hall.
You're right, man. You're right.
And the difference is with Jon Jones, he was caught cheating. But once he cleansed his body, he was forced to clean out his body of drugs after USADA, having to make sure he never tested positive for steroids, to never use steroids. He hasn't in his I think after Jones Cormier 2, he hasn't tested positive since. And is he still winning? Is he still getting wins? Is he still getting title defenses? Is he still putting in submissions, getting knockouts, winning by unanimous decision? He's still undefeated. He doesn't have 11 losses, unlike Anderson Silva.
You're right.
He has the one loss. I have to put air quotes behind it. The one loss.
Why do different people, Elliot, have different GOATs? So, for example, you would say GSP, and that's super cool. If you ask Khabib that, I'm pretty sure he would say the GOAT is also GSP. But if you ask Joe Rogan, he would say the GOAT is Jon Jones. But if you ask Conor McGregor who the GOAT is, he would say Anderson Silva. So I'm curious, why do you think there's such a debate? Why is it not obvious? Why can't everybody point to the same guy? What makes this so such a discussion?
Well, it's a subjective opinion. There's no set in stone on who the greatest of all time is. It's in a subjective thing. I think one of the things, the analogy that Chael Sonnen used, I'm going to quote him here, is that you could have Michael Jordan and LeBron James have them set in their primes playing each other one-on-one, or a game of horse, or a game of pig, or whatever, and there'd still be people who would say, yeah, Kobe was the GOAT. No, Chamberlain was the GOAT. No, Magic Johnson was the GOAT. because this is a subjective thing. Because you look for different things in what's a GOAT. That's why I was hearing a lot, like when it comes to basketball, for example, that there were generational GOATs, like the best for their decade. Like for the 2010s here, like the best player was LeBron. So it'd be like LeBron's era, and then you go back to the 2000s, and Kobe was the best in the 2000s. So it'd be like Kobe would have been the 2000s GOAT, and then you have Jordan as like the 90s GOAT, and you go so on and so on.
Gotcha.
You apply that to same football. You could apply that to hockey. You could apply that to baseball, the major four sports here in North America. Easy. But fighting is a little different because there's always a little something different you look for. Like I remember listening to like Joe Rogan asked about that same question about how Jon Jones is the GOAT, and he looks at everything, and that's why kind of like fight fans a little bit more invested, more passionately invested, because you're looking for more things. You're looking at the striking, the record, had they been caught, the amount of losses, their amount of wins, titles, title defenses. You're looking at literally everything down to the finest detail, including for like some cases, you're looking at like the minor strikes, like all the way down to the way they kick, to the way they throw a punch, the way they think. That's one of those I've heard recently, like for the GOAT conversation when it comes to fighting, is a fighter's mentality. You don't hear that in any other sport.
No, never.
The mentality of a GOAT. You don't hear that in any sport. You don't hear, for example, I need to think of a good example, actually. Let's go. Probably say, I'll just go back to basketball. Nobody goes, like people say, oh, there's the GOAT mentality. Kobe had the GOAT mentality. LeBron, Michael, they all have that GOAT mentality. Where in fighting, it's like, no. Like with MMA, it's like, no. There's one. Everyone has a different mentality. Which one is the best?
Which one is the most fit for fighting? Which one is the most fit for that octagon?
Yeah, not just because you're the best player, you must think the best.
Not just because you're driven and hardworking. There's more than that. Well said. Well
Jon Jones is known for not working very hard, and
yeah, man,
he's so talented. He's so good.
Look at him, man.
That is amazing.
Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Man.
Who'd you have in your GOAT list? Like in your little conversation, little conglomerate there?
Yeah, in mine, man, there was a lot that, there's three names that I would always think of. Like, for a fact, it would always be GSP, Jon Jones, and Anderson Silva, if I forget about his record. Because then when you do notice how many times he's lost, it's a little hard to, put him in there. But those two definitely. And then more recently, I would put in Khabib. I would put in Israel Adesanya. I would put in Amanda Nunes.
Khabib,
yeah, I would even arguably put in this young man. This was a guy who, there's this one video on YouTube, you got to check it out. It's Khabib and a bunch of other world champion grapplers and wrestlers and judo people sitting around a table. And Khabib sits there, and there's a bunch, I'm trying to think who else was there, man, but they're all wrestling backgrounds. And Khabib looks to the guy sitting on his right, which was Henry Cejudo, and he goes, brother, right now, like, you are, I don't know if he says the GOAT, I don't want to quote him, but he says either you are the most prestigious champion or the most accredited champion, because if I'm not mistaken, Henry Cejudo was the youngest ever gold medalist in Olympic level wrestling. And then he comes over and becomes double champ. So like, Jesus, like, how do you can't even compare, like what criteria, you know what I mean? Like it's unbelievable. And not even to mention a guy like Jose Aldo. Like Jose Aldo, my God, he's a beast on its own. Is it enough to put him in that conversation, man? I don't know. But he's definitely was I mean, Jesus, man, there's so many.
And yeah, is there so many? You could even put in Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson.
Oh my God, dude, Demetrius Johnson was good. Holy shoot. Did you see that the classic suplex armbar?
Because I agree with that one 100%.
Yeah, right? Cejudo just kind of dipped out. I was gonna say, did you remember that that suplex into an armbar, right? DJ was fighting. Who was it? He was fighting this guy. Oh, I can't remember his name. But the ending sequence was DJ gets his back and he picks him up as if he's about to suplex him, and then in the air he transitions into an armbar.
Goes for the armbar.
Freaking believable, man.
I think that was Ray Borg.
Yeah, that was it.
Against Ray Borg. Yeah. Well, DJ was something else.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, he was so good that the UFC was like, yeah, we don't have any good fighters for you left to fight anymore.
It's
we're
a shame,
going to trade you for Ben Askren.
It just
that was funny.
That Ben thing was interesting, but it sucks, right? Because DJ was in this position where you're so good, but instead of a lot of the people saying, "How look how good DJ is," they say, "Hey man, that league sucks," right? That division that you're in, there's no real names in there, so that's why I feel like DJ never got the promotion that he deserved, right? He wasn't a trash talker, but dude, Anderson Silva's not a trash talker. George St. Pierre wasn't a trash talker, so I don't buy that. Khabib's not a trash talker, but I feel like. I feel like Demetrius Johnson was the perfect example of you have to be more than just a good fighter. You have to have that entertainer, that Chael Sonnen, you absolutely suck, that Israel Adesanya, that Jon Jones. Like, people have to want to pay to watch you, because if you're the greatest fighter in the world,
Conor McGregor.
Exactly. But if people don't want to pay, and it sucks because I don't want to say everybody has to trash talk, but you have to entertain. You have to want to get people to spend money to see you. Otherwise, you're going to end up like DJ, unfortunately, a guy who was, I think, unbelievably underrated with respects to the amount of money he was making and really his fame in the eyes of the people who were just casuals. That was a big rant, but you know what I mean.
True. I know. Oh, 100%. Like especially if like the UFC kind of rely, like they know fans, hardcore fans, or just like actual MMA fans that aren't hardcore fans will still watch, even if there's like no title fight on the main card or any like exciting fighters, they'll still watch. Remember, like UFC 208, Jermaine Demian Holly Holm was the main event. It was one of the worst performing cards. I remember tuning in. I'm assuming you tuned into that one too.
I saw the highlights.
QDR just kept eye gouging Holly Holm the entire time, and only got one warning. I was like, considered one of the worst ref fights of all time. I remember tuning into that fight, even though I found it quite boring and infuriating with all the eye gouging. I'm pretty sure I remember tuning into that card, and really only hardcores would turn, or only fans would turn into that card.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like no one on that card really had that trash talking ability to promote a fight. I remember Holly Holm or GDR being known for absolutely looking around and absolutely ripping into every fighter on that stage. You don't usually see one of those fighters being asked a question, who would you think would be the easiest fight for you on stage? And going around saying, I could beat all of them. And then get Jeremy Stevens to yell at him in the back, yell at you in the back, and you can just bury him there on stage like Conor.
Yeah, but honestly, Elliot, look at Khabib though. Like, how did Khabib get so big? Now, you'd argue, say he's a great fighter, right? GSP was a great fighter. Who else doesn't trash talk and is a great fighter? There has to be a lot, man. But what did they do?
Oh, there's a lot.
How did they market themselves without trash talking and with more than just being a good fighter? How did that happen?
Khabib was different. Casuals didn't know really that much about Khabib, in my opinion, from like those I know that are casual fans, until Conor. Until like, I think probably UFC 229 at the latest, when he was fighting Conor, when he was coming back.
You're completely right.
The whole time they're marketing the fight as Conor's return. Remember John Anik, he was saying his first words before Herb Dean started the fight, he was saying, "The king is back, looking to reclaim his crown." As the cameras were fixated on McGregor.
Oh man.
Khabib smashed him. He defended that belt. And then like the biggest brawl at an MMA event outside the fight took place. But
that was insane. If people
marketed it around Conor, and then it wasn't until Khabib beat him and how Khabib was able to handle the trash talk, the insults thrown at his wife, his religion, his parents, his kids, being called monkeys by this guy.
What do you think about that? What do you think about trash talking like that?
Insults at Mayweather, and how he took it personally and just mauled him. It was like, it wasn't really until then people started to, those that were really anti-McGregor started to really kind of build his platform for casuals to want to tune in. Because then people think about he's undefeated. He mauled McGregor. Let's go ahead and pay to watch this guy maul someone else. That's kind of how I think about it for him, which is a little tougher for a DJ. No, not a big trash talking guy who is an absolute world class champion, who is also for like most of his, like for a good amount of his career, was also a construction worker. He was a tradesman as well.
I had no idea.
As a UFC fighter. Yeah. You used to only train 2 to 3 times a week. He said it was like it's only time he's ever on the Joe Rogan podcast. Talking about how he's a construction worker. He would lay bricks for buildings and stuff, and you'd mix concrete. And you'd only train 2 to 3 times a week. And he was fighting in the UFC. He wasn't until he committed to training every day till he won the world championship.
Wow. I love those kinds of stories, man. They're amazing.
No, and it's and kind of because he didn't trash talk as much, that he had to work that job just for extra cash. Because like the whole UFC's phenomenon is to never overpay fighters like you do in boxing. And I do agree with the analogy when Dana went on stage. I think he did an interview with Business Insider in front of an audience and stuff. And he was showing what a fight would look like if 2 fighters knew they were going to get paid $37 million each.
Oh.
And I'll send you the link. If you haven't seen it, I'll send you the link later. And it's just him running around in circles, going, I don't want to get punched in the head for a good 30 seconds. So because of that, like, it made these fights interesting and made the fighters want to fight for bonuses. And it's exciting to watch, but it's tough for those like guys like Demetrius Johnson. Should not need to work a second job unless he is absolutely passionate for it, like Stipe is for firefighting.
That's unbelievable, Elliot. It really shouldn't be like that. Like, I totally get the point, but the fact that you have someone at the UFC at the highest caliber who's a champion, who has double jobs, like you said yourself, because he needs to, that's terrible. Like, because every time you step in there, right, you're putting your life on the line, right? You don't talk about permanent brain damage and injuries, and this isn't a job you can do for very long. And your contract, you can get cut like that. So I think it's ridiculous, man. I don't know if they should make as much as boxers make, because you're right, Dana had a point there. But man, when you going back to Tony Ferguson, you are losing a part of your life. Like Tony, like you said, I agree. I don't think he's ever the same, and he'll never be the same. Like, there's a chance that you just brought the chances of you developing Alzheimer's and dementia and just like neurocognitive decline.
Yeah.
Like, oh my, and it's heartbreaking. It really is. Like, you should at least get compensated for that danger that you put yourself in. Don't you think so?
Yeah, and actually one of the things was presidential candidate for the 2020 election, Andrew Yang. One of the policies he wanted to actually enact in the first 100 days in office, if he got elected, he said, was to try and create a medical union for MMA fighters specifically.
No way. Huh.
He's a huge MMA fan.
No way. I had no idea.
Yeah. He's a big MMA fan. He's a big sports fan. Big fan of comedy as well. He was a big fan of comedians like Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle. It was kind of interesting.
That's sick.
And
man,
he wanted to create medical like benefits and stuff and programs and like to protect UFC fighters.
Wow.
And Bellator fighters and MMA promotions like the World Series of Fighting that are based in the United States. Like the headquarters are based in the United States. They mainly run fights out of the US. So it made sense because, like, especially someone like Ferguson, I think he's kind of he came in as already unstable kind of being, like, into the sport. Like, now he's like a shadow of himself mentally, and it's rough to see, and I think it's just going to get worse. And this is like, luckily for him, he's made a lot of money because he's so popular.
Yeah, you're right.
But like, imagine like a prelim fighter that makes at best like $50K, which is still a nice amount of cash, making around 50 to 100K a fight, but it's not gonna like is it worth permanent life damage for 50K,
Terrible,
100K?
It's terrible.
I don't think it is.
That's the bad part of the sport, huh? That's the unfortunate. They're just the unavoidable injuries, and I would argue that's almost in any martial art, right? You're gonna go there, you're gonna get bruised, hopefully nothing as serious as permanent brain damage. But a lot of those guys who go into boxing, even just like our age, Elliot, they go in there just to have fun, just the constant hits to the head, right? The neck just snapping back, and just by sparring, 20, 30 years of sparring like that, it's gonna impact you, and it sucks because you're not making any money, dude. You just go there for fun. I mean, if you just do it for fun,
Yeah.
Jeez, man, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. Like martial arts, it's a way, like for some, like with traditional martial arts, it's a way of life, and with more modern martial arts, it's a sport. It's a contact sport. It's a sport all about discipline. It's a sport about how to hit someone else while taking the least amount of damage.
Yep.
Sometimes it ain't gonna work. Well, you're gonna get clocked a few times. That's happened to me. It hurts. It does not feel good. I'm assuming, like, I know for you, for a fact, you probably had the same type of experiences. You're a martial artist just as much as I am, so you definitely know what it's like.
Jesus, man, everything. Just a leg kick, man. Like I feel like what do you mean he kicked him in the leg? Like, have you ever been kicked in the leg, Elliot? Like in the calf or something? Holy shoot, man! Like your leg just goes numb. You're like, what the hell?
Like, the worst is when you get kicked in behind, like when you get kicked around the knee.
Oh, man,
that's the worst. You kick on the inside of your leg, right where close to the knee, or underneath the knee.
Oh, man.
And hyperextend your leg. Those hurt so much. They're so painful that they've made those kicks around the knee illegal in MMA.
Yeah, man, rightfully so.
Big John McCarthy.
Christ.
Because those hurt.
Oh, Jesus.
Like you throw those in like self-defense.
Jesus.
Because they're so effective when it comes to hurting someone else. Yeah.
Man. Elliot, my man, what else is on your mind with respects to just like could be martial arts related, UFC related, life related, anything? What else? Is there anything else? Any other like burning, like, yo, I really want to talk about this, or we haven't talked about this topic yet?
Like we've kind of covered the good amount with like the UFC already. There are a lot of that was kind of really nothing else kind of pressing on my mind, but like. And I'm just more excited for just this year of fighting. Like just looking at like MMA as like a sport. Because I think it's just only going to get better. Like, I do think like, for example, boxing is on the decline. There's some good fighters, but like the best boxer in the world right now is Canelo Alvarez for me. I think he's the best, and he's struggling to find a fight. And in my opinion, he's a bigger sell, and he's a better fighter than a Terrence Crawford or a Spence Jr. And he's a bigger sell than Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua would be.
Interesting.
And you can't find him a fight. And you don't promote anyone else in boxing except the stars.
That's
MMA,
terrible,
they
man.
promote everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And they promote the females and the men's equally. Which is something you don't see in boxing. They promote more than just the main event. They promote the main event on the prelims as well in MMA. You don't see that in boxing. They even promote other personalities such as their commentators and their ringside girls. You don't see that in boxing. You do everything as a marketing standpoint better than boxing. And boxing doesn't have that Roy Jones Jr. star, Floyd Mayweather star anymore. Pacquiao's out, pretty much almost out the door. I think the only fight he wants is McGregor or Mayweather, and then he wants to retire and run for president of the Philippines.
Wow. That'd be
boxing. Yeah, boxing's done.
Yeah, you
I
think
think
so?
it's dying because of that.
Wow.
Where MMA, it's just only going to get better. It's only going to get better.
I'm so excited.
It's
God
so
bless Dana
exciting.
White, man. God bless Dana White and his genius and his
Yeah.
brilliance.
Exactly. Even though, like, I think some of the stuff he says and some of the stuff he does is can be a bit off-putting.
Oh, of course.
The way
He's
he's
got a
able
lot
to
of.
spin things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a brilliant businessman.
Mm-hmm.
A brilliant promoter. And he's not as cartoonish or like the WWE promoters.
Yeah.
And he actually has morals. Like, he won't be bought like Don King in boxing to fix fights.
Hell yeah.
He's gonna keep it as clean as he can. He's gonna keep it as professional as he can. He's gonna keep MMA he was hired in 2001 to turn MMA from human cockfighting in the eyes of many, including the guy who led the movement to ban MMA in America, former Republican Senator John McCain, to a legitimate sport. And he did.
You're right.
He marketed the right guy in George St. Pierre. Boom. Just like that. It's a legit sport. That's pretty awesome. Like, in Pride, like the first ever MMA promotion, it was known for having no rules. And that only sold in Japan because they loved having two warriors, like warrior culture, just absolutely beat the brakes off each other. They didn't care if they were hitting each other in the groin, hair pulls, on roids.
Yeah.
They bathing in baby oil the night before, it's gonna be all greased up so they can be pinned to the ground. Anything that they could do to win, they would love.
Oh man.
Yeah. Stuff in the gloves. My God.
It's come a long way, man. MMA has come a long way.
How Dana was able to turn a sport like that into a legitimate, everyday household name, organization, and sport is unbelievable. You got to tip your hat off to the guy.
100%.
Hard work.
100%.
He's the best promoter, and best director and president of a sporting company, or of a company in general that I've seen in a long time. I've actually seen ever, to be honest. I'm not really that old, so.
No, I would agree, man. I would agree. I'm very excited for the future. I'm very excited for the future of UFC, just for the future of fights, man, and what we have in stock, and that 155-pound division, and what Jon Jones is going to do, and what Israel Adesanya is going to do. I think they're going to be very exciting, just to keep our eyes on our TVs.
I almost forgot. Covington Masvidal.
Did I get announced?
170 pounds is going to be exciting.
Hasn't
been announced.
Oh, okay.
Colby's you did an interview over the phone with Chael, and he says the only fights that I'm going to be doing in 2021 are Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. And he's gotten calls from Dana saying that Masvidal he's signed, and that he's just waiting on Masvidal to sign.
Oh, that's exciting, man. That's exciting. That's a dope fight.
I knew I was getting something bad.
No, that's an awesome one. That's an awesome one.
2 teammates, 2 roommates, 2 best friends, and all of a sudden Colby leaves the gym they've been training at since they were kids. It's like something happened. The trash talk back and forth between those two going up to the fight, and the classic striker versus wrestler combo, how they helped work with each other, elite striker, elite wrestler, lifted each other up to world champion status. That fight sells itself.
Oh, for sure. I'm excited, man. I'm super excited. Hey, Elliot, I had so much fun talking to you today, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. It was a blast. I feel like I was talking a mile a minute.
Yeah, dude, it was sweet, dude. It was awesome. We got to just get all of our MMA, UFC, all the fun stuff out there. Hopefully, we got to convey some of our excitement, some of our energy to the people listening on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. So thanks to everybody for listening. And again, Elliot, thank you so much for having you on, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Anytime, man. Anytime.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody. This has been another episode of the Damn Delicious Experience. Take care.